Alright, so Kraven the Hunter, it is officially released, it is finally here, and with this movie marking the end of the Sony Spider-Man Villain spin-off universe, or whatever the heck it's called, and just with the way I didn't want to tell this movie, with Kraven being the Spider-Man villain being portrayed by Aaron Taylor Johnson, along with the story and the plot and the action, and wow, did this movie lack so much potential and what could have been better. That could have set up for so much more down the road as well. And so this will be my full and non-spoiler review. We'll talk about my thoughts, and I'm just gonna rant on this video, but add a little bit of friendly to it. But it's mostly just like a random video for how bad this was and for how poorly bad they handled the story of Kraven, and there's so much more to talk about right here. And so if you're new, then be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so it's not on any future videos. But now let's talk about Kraven. Oh boy, where do I begin? With the Kraven the Hunter, and especially with this character being adapted from Marvel Comics, and this is mostly like a Spider-Man villain that likes to hunt and prey for predators, and even when they were making this movie, and even for how they told his story, and especially for how he gets his powers, and especially with the Sony Spider-Man Villain spin-off universe that was like a failed attempt from Sony. I mean, what the heck is Sony doing with this universe? I mean, even if you have or have not heard the news that this universe is over, it's officially dead in the water. And so with having Kraven being like the last movie to end it all, and I want to say, I mean, even though this ended on a bad note, but I'm sort of glad that it's over, because even with the movie that looked so generic and looked like it was something from the 2000s, and also with this movie having been delayed for so long, even though I didn't want to fix up some touches, but it ended up being a complete mess in between as well, and that's what I really want to rant about right here, is that like I think Sony handled this like so poorly. I mean, I know like they're like a small budgeted studio, but they could have handled this story better. Like especially if you know Kraven from the source material and from the video games, especially Insomniac with Spider-Man 2 with PS5. But with the way that they like adapted his story in live action, it was sort of ridiculous. Like I could not look past it. I think it's a movie that I'll see once, and it's gonna be so forgettable in like a day or two, and like even though it matches like the same vibe and the same generic feel as sort of like Morbius and Madam Web, but even though I liked Kraven a bit more than Madam Web, but it was such a massive disappointment, and like, oh man, like it's like this is something that was like so like unfolded in like a way that I could not understand or look past on. Even with Aaron Taylor Johnson, I gotta admit, who was totally ripped and totally crushed the role of Kraven. Like he looked so good. I mean, they could have not casted like a better action actor. I mean, like he portrayed Kraven like so good on screen, but I feel like they could have handled his story better. And like, I mean, I get that. I mean, like we know Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's done the action genre like with Kick-Ass and Quicksilver in the MCU. But to see him portray a Spider-Man villain in the Marvel Sony universe, and to have that on screen, I thought it was just poorly done with the way that they handled it. Like, it was like a clobbering mess from the editing for the way that these scenes were shot. I can almost guarantee you, like, with the way that I think, like, line delivery, it was, like, so awful. And I feel like it was built on, like, re-recorded lines, as it didn't even feel natural coming from the actor's mouth. But it totally had like a much different vibe to it. That although I did like the action, it was like sort of good, and even though with having the R rating, and it was just a cheap gimmick, because again, on one hand it looked like a bloody violent movie, but on the other side it looked like a PG-13 generic 2000s movie. but from the Marvel Universe, from the way that the movie starts, and even like for how can I describe the third act? Well, it was almost like the final battle. It was something from a PS2 game, but with those fucking graphics, but released in the 2020s, but that was supposed to be released back in like the 2010s. That's how I can describe the third act for you. It just felt so ridiculous, and also even for the way that they handled the plot, because especially with Kraven, and that is like a motivated with a ruthless relationship with his father, played by Russell Crowe. I mean, I gotta admit, I did like Russell Crowe in this film. I feel like he gave a good performance, but even like he is a legend, but even putting him in a universe that's like fairly attempted, I liked him in the role, but even though he played Kraven's father, and along with the other cast members as well, like with Ariana DeBose, that plays this sort of lawyer, and like is by Kraven's side and what he wants to help him to do, because Kraven is like now motivated to be like the greatest hunter in the world, or people fear him. Like if you're on his list, you cannot get off it. But even with the way that they handled his origin for how they get his powers, like in the Marvel comics, it is extremely different, and that's what people like from it. Even for how they handle it in the movie, that how he gets his DNA from a lion, and from having a lion's blood in his wound, and that's how he became the hunter. And I feel like it was so ridiculous, like, because I think back to when this movie was supposed to be released a year ago, October of 2023. That's right, but it got delayed to like a year later, or for like some stuff that Sony or whatever the heck they want to do. But just with the way that the story was poorly handled, I feel like every scene and then that we see from the movie, and even from the trailer, it was like it was like another 2-hour generic action Marvel mess. I just hope that Sony can do much better. But even a lot of stuff that I saw, it kind of lacked potential, because even with Kraven, once again, who is a Spider-Man villain, but I would love to see him going up against a Spider-Man, but this movie lacked so much that could have made Kraven like a badass hunter, or like a very cool Spider-Man villain for the way that we see him in the comics. And also, I want to point out with Rhino, and the way that they handled him in this movie, it was so poorly done. And I'm thinking in my head, is it just me, or did they really make the Rhino look like a giant, or like some poorly bad CGI? Because the design was extremely awful, to the fact, because of these delays. It really set out to be like a goofy villain, and he was totally wasted. I want to add on with Chameleon as well. Like, I feel like he did a good job, and is also known as Dimitri, who is Kraven's half brother, and I like their on-screen chemistry, but it was poorly bad. But even with the rest of the bad guys, I feel like they were like totally wasted, because a lot of stuff lacked potential, but some because I think some parts were cut out, or they were just put there to please people. But I just think, like, I mean, go out and see this movie and see it for yourself. Form your own opinion. I don't know if I can recommend this movie to you all, but it's extremely laughable, awful movie from beginning to end, and there are some parts where I just like laughed how badly this movie was made, and I think like it could definitely done better. But hey, we got what we got, and I mean, Aaron Taylor Johnson crushed it. I'm happy for him, but along with the story and the plot and just with everything else, it kind of felt like an empty, awful final product. And yeah, so my final thoughts are like, I mean, Kraven the Hunter, it was such a disappointment, and it was not that good at all. And it had poorly done characters. I mean, especially as these actors are great, but they were totally wasted in this film. But I think like we'll have to see for what lies ahead. But again, I think I give this movie like such a low bad rating. And yeah, I'm so glad that this universe is done with. It was an extremely awful movie, and from the direction that this movie was heading, it was just so awful. But that's gonna do it for this video. Just let me know in the comments below, and if you've seen Kraven or if you're planning on seeing it, just let me know in the comments below. What would you rate this movie 1 out of 10? I'm curious your thoughts. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to know the notifications about future videos. And also follow all my social medias over to link down below. And with that, I'll see y'all next video. Peace.